All right.
Okay. What we have as a continuation from the 50s, we have some of the odd things, novelty ties that were around the era, and this is one that the glasses are actually a pin that goes through the tie and is clipped. It's like a tie clip that runs through the tie. If you were to take it out, she has eyes. No, she doesn't have eyes. There are the holes to which it goes through.
She only has eyes for you. And it's right there, just to show that he didn't make it himself. Okay. Wow. It says it has specs appeal.
There we go.
How's that?
Yeah, the one
for $1.50.
In the book, it's the one on the lower left in the corner.
Well, yeah. Thank you, John. Yeah, that one right there.
That's it.
It's the same one, just different color.
And 50s had some raciness still to them. And you had this stripe number from Schroeder's in Detroit. But then we go back to what the 50s was generally about. A brown geometric tie, probably no name, and a really very representative would be your striped tie. This might be something that might signify some organization that I might not be able to wear for for some sort of classification. Striped ties, the English stripes go top to bottom, right to left, and ours go left to right.
Exactly.
So I have no idea why. They say that it was due to photography at the time, and they wanted to copy the tie. The problem is you have a reverse negative, and boom, they switched it over. But that
was funny British.
Yes, yeah. and so then we start to get down into really thin. At the end of the 50s, the ties really started to get thin. This is probably early 60s, to say the least. And it's an example of what you would find, because it's a bolder pattern, more texture and feel. And this is no name tie. A lot of ties over the years, they got clipped the name tag off of.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, I have a number of ones that I bought, and it's like I'm walking around and there's something on the floor, and it's the label that's falling off of the tie.
Exactly.
After 60 years, it finally figures out it can't hang on.
No, exactly.
And we have some
great
examples here of that 60s tie.
Anyway, there's a club in downtown LA called the Cicada Club. As you should be cicada, the long quibble. The point is, it's the Oviatt building. Oviatt was a haberdashery in downtown LA for decades, and this was sold by the Oviatt. I found this at a thrift store, and I quickly telephoned Marc Chevalier, who was sort of a neighbor of mine, and told him that there were quite a few. He went down the next day and bought them all. But I picked up this beauty, and it's a typical, maybe late 50s tie that Oviatt would have sold. I couldn't tell how much it would have sold for, maybe about $4 at that time. Now, even though the 50s were a conservative time period, in some ways, let's not stereotype them, but in some ways they still had their moments. This is a tie I picked up at a thrift store. It's called the Ballerina. And normally I wouldn't wear something like this, Dave, don't get me wrong, okay? But when I looked at it, I looked at the back, and I immediately said to myself, score, because this is a peekaboo. Peekaboo. No, she's wearing a bathing suit, okay? But the point is, for that time, that was a little bit racy, I would guess, more or less. So the 50s weren't that boring after all.
Well, one of the things that we have to remember is that when it comes to suits and ties, is you have business wear type of stuff, and then you have the thing you're dressing up to go out, or the guys are real sport.
The guys, exactly. That's it.
The sporty look.
Thank you. Well, we see a late 50s tie, and how do we know? Because if you can see, it's kind of hard to tell, this has the motif of steering wheels, swirls, and also automobiles with tail fins.
Really?
So this basically is a late 50s tie, okay?
I'm going to
no doubt about it. If you
zoom in a little bit, see if we
can.
can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Yep.
How do you like it, Justin, or what do you think? You were kind of not too excited before, but
It's still thin.
it's still thin. Here's the back of the tie. You can see the construction. In the early days, ties were not sewn all the way in the bottom. You may have been able to pick that up from the ones we showed you. But as time went, they did that. This was sold at Eddie Waters' store in West Covina, John, California.
Wow, West Covina.
Right, you and Max.
Yeah.
And it's a Corey tie. Corey was a pretty famous manufacturer of tie in those days. It is probably acetate. But I think this is a pretty out-of-sight tie that I picked up at the thrift store. Love it. Nice fins. Looks like maybe a 57 Ford.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. Now, as we progress, as Justin mentioned, ties get narrower and narrower, to use that term. This is hand-painted in California, thank you. And it's a late 50s tie, probably. It's dead stock. It still has the tab on it. But a nice tie, very much so. So there was a little bit of color in the 50s, late 50s, a little bit still. In fact, even as you get into the early 60s, and this is a rooster tie, we see that, you know what, there was still some experimentation in graphics. We're on a ship, and again, here we have a tie that features, I'm not sure if it's a galleon, but it's an old type of sailing ship at anchors. And again, produced by Rooster, and this was probably around 1963, 64, I'm guessing, about that time period.
Looks like a corporate tie for Mayfair Movers.
You could be right.
Yeah, I guess the ship made me think of the old.
You could be right, John.
Yeah.
Now, I had a tie even thinner than this. Maybe it fell off in the car. I don't know. I was going to show you a tie that is actually 1 inch, because some of you think, no, they couldn't have gotten that thin, and yet they did. And it still has color.
Look at that.
This is rare.
You should have been a shoelace.
Maybe for the Jolly Green Giant, yeah. But thank you, Matt, for that comment. But the thing is, even though this is definitely an early 60s tie, it's very thin, probably about 1.5 inches, it's got a lot of color to it. This was shocking when I found this, because normally you don't see this. You see something plain and drab, maybe some diagonals, but this was almost like the dying gasp before you got to the mid-1960s, and the kipper tie. The kipper tie came from England, and you went basically from about 1.5 inches to about 5 inches. And that was about 1965. But let's say this for the record, companies kept producing thin ties until about 1967. In fact, I've seen jackets dated 1969 with thin lapels. So it didn't happen overnight. There were transition models. But basically, as we get ready to close this lecture and seminar, you do, in the space of, let's say maybe 3 to 4 years, go from this to this. I know, James Power says, put it away. But this is the granddaddy.
Is that a tie or a lobster bib?
It could be both, John.
That's big.
Here's what it is. Here's what it is.
That's a secret code on that tie. But the point is, do you have any more things you want to say, Justin? Or
No.
Not really.
You get, especially when you end on 70s.
when you end on 70s,
there we go.
but you know, mark my words, this will be collectible someday. I'm not joking. There will be a generation that will find this and go, man, out of sight, or whatever words they use then, and they will start collecting this. You know,
And one day they'll take the $15 and they'll put a 1 in front of it.
that's the trick. That's what you do. You add more digits, and it's just exactly. Thank you, Matt Deckard. Anyway, so we will end on that note, and as we end, let me just get one good tie to go out with, actually, because we've seen so many that were crazy. If I can find just one more. Let's end, I guess, with this puppy. Just again, the beautiful late 40s, early 50s hand-painted tie. And this would probably, you could probably pick this up at some shops for maybe $20, $25. Okay? Beautiful tie. But anyway, that again is a short history of neckties. Thank you, John, for filming. Thank you, Fedora Lounge. Thank you, Justin, for your collection and for allowing us to use your stateroom.
That concludes this
Thank
presentation
you very
of
much.
Fedora Lounge ties.